Hey, good evening, guys. Welcome to another Tuesday night podcast. And we're live and talking about real estate investing tonight. I got a great guest with me tonight. He's from Canada, Seth Ferguson. He's also a real estate investor. He's a real estate agent guy like myself. He's been in the business for quite some time. He has a YouTube channel. He has a TV show. We were just chit-chatting a little bit offline, and I think maybe he even called me an old guy, but I don't know. But we're going to dive into it tonight. I guess I've been in the business for a very long time, so maybe I'm an old guy when it comes to real estate and real estate investing, guys. You know, what type of real estate investment should you buy? That's a big question that I hear all of the time. You know, what are the pros and cons of each? How do you get started? You know, where do you start? What area do you look for a real estate investment? How do you get your money? This and more we're going to answer here tonight. I've been a real estate investor and a contractor for 32 years. I started back in 1989. I guess that does make me an old guy or an older guy. To some of you millennials that may be listening, guys, real estate is trending. It is hot right now. It is all over the news. We're hearing stories about, high price building materials, supplies, houses selling in hours. Bunch of different offers going on. People paying crazy prices for real estate. Where does it stop? Who knows? Guys, I'm Todd Sachs. I'm a real estate broker. I'm here in Maryland, but we help people all over the country. We've got an amazing broker network of licensed agents. If you don't have a real estate agent and you're outside of Maryland, feel free to reach out to me. And I'll be happy to point you in the right direction. If you are in Maryland, we help buyers, sellers, and renters with both residential and commercial transactions. Without further ado, let's go ahead and meet Seth Ferguson. Seth, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Hey, my pleasure.
So tell everybody a little bit about you.
Yeah, so I am 13 years into the business, so you have a couple more years than I do. 1986 was a great year because that was the year I was born. So
I graduated in 1986, Seth. Yeah, it was a great year. That was a happy year for me graduating high school.
Yeah. So, right now I am involved in multifamily apartment investing. I started out as a real estate broker selling the residential product. And before real estate was even in the picture, I was trying to make the NHL as a hockey referee. So I was doing that. I lived in Minneapolis, and I traveled East Coast, West Coast, all the way down south to Knoxville, believe it or not, working some hockey games. So, but I found that at some point I needed to get a real job because I saw guys trying to make the dream happen. And they were in their 30s, and I knew that the window was closing pretty quick. So I jumped into residential sales.
How long did you sell? Are you still selling now?
Yeah, I still have my license. I'm phasing out of it, getting more on the private equity side of things, but I still have a core group of people who I really enjoy working with. So we'll help them out. But yeah, I had a small real estate team for a while. I started off working on my own. So I've seen the ins and outs of the brokerage side from a couple different ways, and plus my father used to own a brokerage, so I've seen the residential real estate from an agent perspective, a broker owner's perspective. So it's been a lot of fun.
I started contracting back in 1989, doing residential construction, contracting, landscaping, all kinds of construction projects. And through the years, the brokerage side for me came much later. So I didn't actually get my real estate license until 2005. By that time, I was a landlord, had already started, had built houses, flipped a lot of houses, and kind of got into the agent side of things, the broker side of things a little bit later. And I did that as a result of just being frustrated, as a contractor and selling houses. I felt like I was kind of restricted to the group of agents that I had. And, when you just didn't feel like I was being served the way that I should, when you have a product and you're trying to sell it, and I was frustrated. And so that's what forced me to get my real estate license. And, but oddly enough, I didn't let that stop me from using other agents. It just helped me to realize that I was getting the wrong agents and helped me to realize what I needed to do to get the right agent. So, but tonight we're going to talk about some of our stories, let people know what it's like to really be in real estate investing. Guys, we're not financial advisors. So, we're going to talk tonight about our own experiences and try and maybe debunk some myths or share with you some of the things that we've learned throughout the years of buying and selling properties and making mistakes. Like everyone does. You just don't want to, there's a saying out there, Seth, I'm sure you've heard it. Sometimes you eat the bear and sometimes the bear eats you. And I got to tell you, I don't like that. I don't think you can be eaten by a bear too much and make it. So tonight we'll try and stop you from being eaten by the bear. So we can give you a little bit of knowledge and hope that you can learn from it. So what made you talk about your early investing days, Seth? How did you go from, I guess you were an agent before you started investing, right? So what was that progression?
Yeah. So basically what happened was I started selling and I was making what most people would consider really good money. So I had the fancy car. I had a 4-bedroom house all to myself with waterfalls going into the pool. So as a young guy, I was pretty set. But what I realized was, my income was coming in, but it was going out just as fast because the car wasn't cheap. The house wasn't cheap. And I got really frustrated. And then I happened upon a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And I'm sure lots of your guests talk about that. It seems like it's one of the keystone books when it comes to real estate investing. And so I realized that I needed to start acquiring assets, not just have my income come in and go out. And I realized that I was selling the residential product on a day-to-day basis, and I knew the product more than most people. So it made sense for me just to start acquiring residential properties. So I acquired one, and then I had a partner at the time, and we acquired one property, then another one, converted this one, and we built a small portfolio of single-family homes. And that was going really well. I thought I was made. And then some things happened along the road where that all collapsed. And I realized that I was actually investing I was right to invest in real estate, but I was investing in the wrong type of real estate. And I'm sure we'll get into that in a little bit.
Yeah. So you started, did you start with rentals then? You started straight on with rentals, or were you flipping too?
No, I never got into flipping. It was your basic buy and hold strategy. One of them was a duplex conversion. So we had a bungalow, put in a basement apartment, refinance that, use those funds to acquire the next property. So everybody now talks about BRRRR. I had no idea what BRRRR was at the time, but that's basically what was going on. And it was basically what I was comfortable with. So right now in Toronto, where my market was, the average house price is now over $1 million. So that was the type of property I was dealing with. And it had some challenges because the rental yield just isn't there like most people will understand if they're in hot markets now. So you're treading water when it comes to cash flow. You might be negatively geared in some instances, and it's very challenging when you're trying to scale a residential portfolio. And the financing requirements are very constrictive, more so in Canada than they are in the United States. So I was incredibly frustrated as I was trying to grow this portfolio. I was equity rich, cash flow poor, and as you know, you need cash flow to be able to make the next deal happen and keep your portfolio in good shape. So when my son was born, when he came along, I knew that real estate was the right thing to do because I was making more money owning the property than I ever was selling on the residential brokerage side. So I knew owning real estate was smart, but I was investing in the wrong type of real estate because it wasn't getting me to where I wanted to go. And I remember looking at my son when he was first born, and in a blink of an eye, my life changed. And, I wanted to do more and be better for my son now. And I wanted to scale the portfolio. So I remember working out over the next couple of weeks, what I needed to do to hit my real estate goals. And I realized that I needed to own 1,000 houses. And the thought of owning 1,000 houses with 1,000 property bills, 1,000 tenants, that was just too crazy for me. So I knew that I needed to find a different type of real estate to acquire other than single family homes. So that's when I discovered multifamily, and I haven't looked back since.
Yeah, I think, the same with me in one aspect of when I started out, I was buying the wrong property. I think that's, that's common amongst a lot of real estate investors or people that are just naive and starting out. What do you buy? What's right for you? Because you hear stories. I mean, people make money in really every aspect of real estate. I know somebody that has 300 houses around, a college town and 300 plus doors, and they're single family houses, and that works great for them. And then, of course, like you just said, having the multifamily component. So, I think it's, establishing a clear set of goals and really understanding, what your expectations are for investing. Why are you investing? Establishing first that you want to have, and Rich Dad, Poor Dad is such a great book. And, I can remember, when I read that book for the first time, I had already been an entrepreneur, had already been self-employed, had already had a bunch of failures. I had some pretty rough struggles starting out. Like anything, you make mistakes and it can take you out. And I remember reading that book and, you're thinking, well, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Poor Dad wasn't really a poor dad at all. He was actually a very educated dad, and probably to many standards was probably just fine financially. But I think, what happens is you have to decide, in a very steadfast and solid fashion that you want to have something more than just a job income coming in. I think that's sort of like, unless you're in the construction business or like us, Seth, where we're agents and, we're helping people all the time buy and sell. I think that you just have to establish that you just want more than, you want to hedge against that job where you're just making that paycheck. And I'm not saying give that up and maybe necessarily never give it up, right? For some people, you never give that up, but just to decide that you want more, and that real estate, for me and you, we know it's a permanence of investment. It's one of the first things you're taught about when you're going into school, real estate school, is that, it's permanence, it's tangible. You can touch it, you can feel it, you can visit it, right? You can bank on it. You can get a loan against it. So these are things that kind of establish, in my words or my world, a potentially good investment versus something that I can't see. I've never been great at the stock market. Personally, I've lost way more than I've gained. So, but yeah, you're right. Establishing that multifamily love and, going down that path in that direction was right for you. You do a lot of teaching, you author, you have a book out to help people maximize their profits, upside on their investment. What do you tell people when they say, if I want to get into real estate, how do you advise them what type of property is right for them?
Yeah, if I knew the answer to that question when I first started, I would be millions and millions of dollars ahead because I made a big mistake when it came to that. So my advice now is I have people take, several days or several weeks and really think about where they want to be in 10 years. What do they want their life to look like who will they be with, what are they doing, what's important to them, what charities they're supporting, what's important to them, all that kind of stuff. And then we work backwards, because the mistake I made was I was selling residential homes. So I started buying residential homes, but I was acquiring these properties with no idea where I was going. So I didn't understand the impact on how my first purchase and my second purchase would influence my third and fourth. I didn't have any idea of how, acquiring these properties, what trajectory it would put me on, 10 years down the road. So now, and it cost me at least a decade. So if I would have taken the time and actually thought about, okay, well, in 10 years, I want to be over here with my life looking like this, because I had a guest in my podcast last year, and his life goal is to run his entire portfolio from a pub in Ireland. He wants to move to Ireland, enjoy his Guinness, and run his entire real estate portfolio. So every single choice he makes is going to be taking him closer to that goal. So how he sets up management, it's going to be, in his mind, he's thinking, I'm sitting in a pub in Ireland. When it comes to reporting and all that stuff, he's going to frame and build everything so he can sit on his phone, drinking Guinness, and run his portfolio. I didn't have any type of roadmap like that. So it was more like a haphazard approach to building a portfolio. So now when I'm talking with somebody, it's like, okay, where are you heading? What do you want your life to look at? Now let's talk about what sort of real estate assets can help you get there. Because, if you want to be totally passive and traveling the world, having an Airbnb portfolio where you're actively managing it yourself probably isn't a good fit. But, if you're somebody who wants to roll up their sleeves and you really enjoy the process of, getting to work and, getting your hands dirty, and you really like the build process, well, maybe you're going to be structuring your portfolio and your business so you can actually do the things you like and spend time every week on the job site. So there's a million different ways to slice and dice real estate, thousands of ways to make money, but it's all about setting it up so it gets you towards your goal. Because Todd, your goal is different than mine, and mine's different from somebody else listening right now. It's just about taking the time and actually thinking about where are you going, and then you can work backwards from there. I totally missed that, and it cost me millions of dollars in at least a decade of progress. So it's well worth the time to do that exercise.
Yeah, and what you do, like you said, I mean, it's what you do for a living. I mean, if you don't have time, I mean, you have to establish what is it that you want from your investment, and then how much time are you willing to put into it to get it out. And if complete passive income is the answer, then you need to start, focusing your properties on income producing properties, your purchases. How much do you let the market conditions, play into your decision making?
I take the approach that you have to be aware of the market, but the market does not dictate your success in real estate. So I like to break things down into, you have your professional investors and you have your retail investors. Your retail investors will access, the real estate market through an intermediary of some sort. So maybe they're investing passively in the deal. And basically a lot of, let's take a retail investor when it comes to the stock market. They see on the news that stocks are going up. They'll buy stocks because they're hoping it's going up. A professional investor, on the other hand, especially when it comes to real estate, we're looking for control. So we're looking for that opportunity where we can control the outcome of the investment. We can't control interest rates. We can't control overall market sentiment. We can't control government legislation, but we can control where we buy, the price we purchase at, the renovations, the work we do, how we raise rents, how we market the property. So a professional investor, you can make money in a hot market, a cold market, or a flat or neutral market. You just have to manufacture the opportunity for yourself rather than just buying something and hoping it goes up. So I'm a big proponent of control. And when it comes to multifamily, of the value add strategy. But, that applies to all real estate. If you're buying, let's say, a duplex, Are you going to buy a duplex where everything's being done 100% and there's really no upside? Or are you going to buy a property where you can add that extra unit where it needs to work? You can go in and manufacture your equity there, and at the end of the road, at the end of the project, you'll be that much further ahead, and then you can refinance or whatever. That doesn't take the market going up to make your money because you've already manufactured that into the deal. Now, obviously, the hotter the market is, there are times where you have to be extra careful, and you have to, in your underwriting and in your numbers, you have to ask yourself, well, when is the next downturn coming? And you have to work that into your business plan. But as far as I'm concerned, there's professional investors make money at every stage of the market cycle. You can't let the market dictate, whether or not you make money. You just have to be very cognizant and aware of where it's at.
Yeah, I've seen a couple ups and downs. I mean, we were talking, before the show, 32 years in the construction industry and serving the housing market primarily. I mean, I've seen this a couple times. Everything's cyclical. I think one of the important things is to understand that it is cyclical. And, right now, we're at the top of the market, I believe. I mean, a lot of people say, well, it's going to keep going up, up, up. I believe it's going to sort of plateau. I think there will be a market adjustment. And I think if you're investing, you have to really be careful, set those goals. One of the things that I always say is, do you own a house now? Are you, if you want to get into real estate investing, I have a lot of millennials that ask me questions all the time, and they say, look, how do I get into real estate? And the first thing I say was, you might want to buy something for yourself. Get started, right? Start home ownership, because a lot of times when you own a home, it's easier to buy a second home. Yeah. When you can show that you are paying for the first home. Yeah. And you can do things like, depending on where you are in your life, you can house hack, where you can put friends inside of the house and rent rooms to them so that they can pay for your mortgage. Or you may look for something like a duplex or a 2-unit dwelling where you can completely rent it out to a stranger even, and live in one of the units. And a lot of that depends on where you are in your life and whether, if you have a partner in life that you're living with, they may not be cool with sharing that extra third bedroom with a stranger, or, living under or over top of a tenant and mixing the business with pleasure. But you have to start somewhere. And I think it's a great place to start. How long have you been doing multifamily?
Oh, about 2.5 years now. But going back to your house hacking, I wish I did that at the start. I remember buying the first house. I was dead set on, it's my house. I'm the only person going to be living in there. If I could go back in time, I'd tell myself to put in a basement apartment, because, that takes care of, depending where you're at, at least half or 3/4 of your rent. And, housing is the biggest expense most people will have. And that sets you up for so much more success down the road. So I think house hacking is a great idea. You were talking about people renting out individual rooms. I've had a couple of my past clients where they're renting out rooms and they're actually profiting a couple $1,000s a month just by renting out additional rooms in their property. So I think that's a great way to get started. And if you can eliminate your housing cost, you've just eliminated the probably the biggest expense you have in your life. And that just means you can bank more money to save up for the next property.
And if you're going to buy a house for yourself and you're not going to house hack, and you have a long-term goal of investing in real estate and, acquiring passive income, or, adding to your job every single year, buy a house that you can fix up. So many people, they buy these houses that you can't finish them anymore. What are you going to do to add equity or value? I mean, the first house that I bought, my wife and I, we got married, we bought this house. It was a little rancher. It was actually a block home. It was a block house. And which nowadays with the cost of lumber is not a bad idea to have
Yeah,
a block
exactly.
house. You can probably build it cheaper, but it was a block house and it was much smaller than it was when we bought it. I think it was a 1-bedroom house and they had made it into a 2-bedroom house and turned the 1-bedroom that was right off the living room. I turned that into an office. I don't know what the previous owners used it for, but what I did was I actually went through, I renovated the house. I put a new kitchen and bathroom in. And then in a couple of years, as our family was growing, I actually built a second story on the house and completely built the house around the house. And, I think I made a couple $100,000 on the house. I mean, it was, I don't remember exactly what the amount was, but it was a lot, and, living in the house, you can claim here quite a bit of money, up to $500,000 in, if you're a married couple, $500,000 in profit on your personal residence. If you live in it for 2 years. And if you're single, I think it's 250,000. But I capitalized on that and then bought something else. But I always say, do something like that. If you know that's your goal is to get into real estate, if you're thinking about, I want to be in real estate, I want to acquire properties, then do what you have to do to start out on the right foot by getting that fixer-upper, getting your feet wet.
Yeah, 100%. But I don't think Instagram was around in the 90s. So you need a nice picture now of your house to go on your Insta. But every time
but you have to not care about what other people think.
100%. Well, because in 5 years or whatever, then they'll see your bank account and you'll be much farther ahead. Every time I see an ugly house, that's potential. Because what happens is when you have like your retail market of buyers, most people will gravitate towards the pretty sparkling house. That's why home staging is, it sells homes. But if you're willing to take on the ugly duckling and actually do the work, not only do you usually end up with a better product because you can finish it how you want, but you've basically built up your sweat equity in the home. I think that's a great way to get started in real estate. Plus, you've lived through the renovations yourself. So when you start renovating your future rentals, the exact process that you have to follow. You've probably learned from a bunch of mistakes you made on your own place so you can avoid them on your second and third and fourth, et cetera houses.
It's a good test too. It can cure you of wanting to do home improvement.
Yeah. Or it can wreck your marriage too.
Yeah. I mean, it can definitely, it can, wreck your marriage. Sure. Your relationships. Definitely. It can, you have a house that's unfinished. I remember one time, I built the house around the kitchen and then we decided we were going to renovate the kitchen. And I forgot to order the appliances and it took like 12 more weeks to get those. And we're literally cooking on a hibachi grill, in the backyard. And my wife was not amused. And my kids learned a whole new meaning of what 2 weeks meant because I always said, I'll have that done in about 2 weeks. And of course, that was 2 months. But anyway, so, I also say too, if you want to get into investing in real estate, do you have your own business? Because a lot of times, and Seth, I don't know if you have done anything with commercial, but, with commercial real estate, you can invest too. And if you have your own business, you're going to be paying somebody's mortgage payment if you're leasing. If your business has been around for a couple years and, it's real nice to get your own location, whether it's an office or a contractor yard or whatever it is that you do. And you can also share space with other tenants and rent out to other businesses, just like you can residential. So, you can do it not just residentially, but you can also invest in commercial property.
Oh, as long as you have a good balance sheet, there are programs out there, depending on, if you're in the United States or in Canada, like there are a ton of programs out there built to help businesses own the space they're in. You mentioned a couple different ways you can do it. We've had people where, they're the anchor tenant and they almost make a sort of incubator with related services in there. So you could have a lawyer who owns the building, and then you could put in an accountant. You could put in, a family law lawyer in there. So you can build a one-stop shop for your clients. So the clients win, you win as a property owner. Your business is stronger for it. And then also, we've had people where they're in a strip mall, and slowly they take over the strip mall and they end up buying the property. And there are so many benefits that come along with owning, whether it's residential or commercial real estate. And plus, it gives your business that you could call it that peace of mind, right? Because you don't have to worry about what the landlord's doing. You put yourself in the driver's seat, which I think is well worth the price of admission, because now you're able to make the decisions that impact your business rather than having somebody else potentially make a decision that's going to hurt you.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you're selecting the properties too, I mean, establishing, as we're kind of going through these things, a lot of questions are like, do I flip? Do I, just get into doing the passive income? What are your thoughts on flipping? How come you've stayed away from it?
Yeah, it just wasn't, the way I looked at it was I was already working a lot of hours, doing my residential sales. And, flipping, it's very, you have compressed timelines, you're working hard, it's very hands-on. And I didn't feel like I was able to do both well at the same time. So I preferred more of like the buy and hold, like the bird type of strategy, rather than, having a number of flips on the go at the same time. Plus the market I was in at the time, the GTA Toronto was a very hot market. It's like, Seattle or New York. So finding those deals where you have enough upside, people talk about the 1% rule and the 2% rule. Those rules do not apply in those markets. So the time to generate those leads and the competition for those leads, I just felt it was a better fit for my lifestyle at the time, to acquire more, do a duplex conversion and burr it like that rather than run a pure flipping business. Now, that being said, I've got lots of friends who've run very successful flipping operations, and they do quite well at it. I didn't think it was a good fit for me at the time.
So your friends that are doing flipping and they're doing well at it, is it what they do full time?
Yeah, they're full time. So some of them have their flipping business and they also wholesale, because they're generating so many leads. They're wholesaling some of their excess leads, so they'll cherry pick the good ones for themselves, and then they've got their buyer list for people who will pick up the other ones that they can't do. Right. So basically, they're full time flipping, and they're running multiple projects at once, and using the power of social media and YouTube. They're documenting their entire process, so they have a big influx of capital. Just because people see what they're doing and they do a good job at presenting it, so that they're able to grow their business even more as they generate, more investor leads as well.
Yeah, it really is a different time. I mean, now you can get so much more exposure with what you're doing through social media. I mean, none of that existed when I started out, and but I've always been from taking from the standpoint of being diversified. I mean, I am never one to want to go all in on one particular thing. It scares me, to say that I'm only going to do multifamily housing, or, I'm only going to do residential. Somebody that's been around for a long time. I mean, I've just seen where the cycles, and depending on where you are, you could really be affected by that. And where, if something starts to lose, something else is picking up that can kind of take the slack. So, I've always been one to, I'm into, multifamily. I'll take on a flip or two. I have some commercial properties. I'll do some land development. I think that, as far as for me, it, goes, if you have a job, I mean, you need to pick one lane, initially starting out. And I think multifamily is probably a great lane, getting something that's turnkey, and talking about, cash flow, being able to pay the mortgage and having something left over. So talk a little bit, Seth, about what it means to get into multifamily or to buy a rental property, even if it is a single family property, and just some of those, things that you need to be aware of and make sure that you are considering when you're looking for these properties.
Yeah, I think right now the biggest, not mistake, but I think the biggest, let's call it a mistake. Okay, so the biggest mistake I see a lot of people making is they're being a little bit too rosy when it comes to their numbers. So it's really easy now because the market is so competitive. They've done their underwriting, they've worked out their business plan for the next 5 years for the property, let's say, and now they're competing against 6 other offers. And, they're in the best and final round. It's so easy to change a number on a spreadsheet. So it's almost like you're tricking yourself because, you change a couple numbers here. Oh, the deal still works. I can up my offer. It's one thing to have a deal work on paper, and then it's another thing to actually make the deal happen in real life. So I think whenever the market is this hot, and you talked about where we're at in the market cycle. I forgot to put the batteries in my crystal ball before we hopped on here, but who knows what's going to happen? But I think whenever the market does get like this, you have to be very conservative in how you're looking at your business plan and expectations for the market in the next couple of years. So that is a big thing to watch out for. The other thing, another thing you can mention is building in a refinance into your business plan. So let's say you're acquiring a 30-unit apartment building and you're planning on doing some value add work, so some renovations, some operational efficiencies, and you've worked into your underwriting that you're going to refinance in year 2. Well, what if the debt market has totally changed in year 2? A refinance isn't guaranteed, but if you work it into your numbers, like your returns and your projections are totally off. And if you're raising capital from other investors, by including that refinance, you've basically promised something that's just fairy dust. So I'm a big believer is, if you're going to do a refinance, don't put it into your underwriting. That's a bonus that may or may not happen. The deal should stand on its own without that additional debt being put on the property. And again, it's just being aware of where you're at in the market cycle. Now's the time. It's not a time not to buy anything, but it's just a time to be extra cautious and just making sure all your T's are crossed when you're doing your due diligence.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, I think, it is important to know that if you're buying right now, you're buying at the top of the market. I think it's, it's the same here. And it's hard to get cash flow. So I think if you're going to buy that rental property, if it's a single family or if it's a duplex or 3-unit, 4-unit, whatever it is, or 30-unit, like you're mentioning, really it's important now more than ever to make sure that you're checking out what the market's like too. Because if you're in a specific area, hopefully there are some comparables that you can look at, vacancy rates or any competing apartments or houses that, would compare to what you're buying, and can you be competitive with those rents? Because if you can't, you're probably going to have a hard time filling it. And then also, like you're saying, Seth, what I try and do is look for, if I'm going to buy in an overpriced market, and I've bought plenty in overpriced markets. I've taken advantage in downturn markets. And guys, when you're thinking about, I just want to kind of talk about something for a minute. If you think it's hard buying now, try buying in a down market.
Yeah, try
because a down
financing.
market. Yeah. Well, here's another thing that's happening. Okay, so when you're in an up market, what are you trying to do? You're trying to buy somewhere before it goes up further. Well, when you're in a down market or declining market, you have no idea where the bottom is. Just like you have no idea where the top is, you have no idea where the bottom is. So what you're thinking about now is, wow, if this goes down tomorrow, the price I give them today, I could actually save money if I waited tomorrow. Or if I waited, it's the exact opposite. So you're thinking, Okay, well, is my competition going to buy now or are they going to wait? Do I buy? Do I buy today? Do I buy tomorrow? It's the same thing, right? Going in an up market. Am I buying now? Am I going? What I think is really important is to know what you're going to do with the property now that you've bought it at the price you have. So where a lot of people make mistakes, or where a lot of beginners make mistakes, and besides getting the wrong real estate agent or advisor, is they forget that the property could have a higher and better use than what it is right now, or what it's even marketed or sold as. And I'll give you a couple examples where I've been really lucky or successful in finding these areas. Is a property that can be subdivided. Is a perfect example. If I buy that property today and I pay $30,000 or $50,000 more than what I maybe should, and time will tell if it keeps going up or whether it goes down. That's how you'll know. Can I at least get another lot out of it? Can I make up some money that way? Or like Seth was saying, can I do a conversion? Can I take a single family house and can I make it a 2-unit? And there are things that you can do that kind of protect you, or before you buy it, like checking the zoning and, the county or the township, and asking what you can or cannot do. So have you had good experience with finding some deals where there was some upside to it?
Oh, for sure. And I think it all comes back down to what I was saying before about control, right? With the severance, you control that. The market doesn't dictate, whether or not you're going to sever the lot. Same thing with changing the zoning on a property. The market doesn't dictate that. You have full control over that process. So, whether you're finding a property where you can rezone it into going from low density residential to medium density residential. Maybe you can take a old dilapidated bungalow and build a sixplex on it. That is an example of highest and best use. And I think, that's almost like the pinnacle of real estate investing, because it forces you to think outside the box and see potential in what's not there today. And that, you'll probably agree that's probably what separates the good investors from the great investors, by having that vision and being able to find those opportunities, especially in a hot market. Because if you're just looking for, let's say, a triplex, an already built triplex, there's only so many to go around and you'll be competing. But if you can find that opportunity to manufacture that triplex that 90% of other people can't see, that's where you really get ahead. And like you said, if the market shifts on you there, you've already manufactured your equity, so you've got that buffer. And then just going back to elaborate, in a down market too, right now in an up market, financing is flowing a lot easier. When things get tough, like I broke into real estate in 2008. On the lending side, it's a lot more challenging to get debt for your deal in a tough market, and you're going to be paying more. The restrictions and what they need is going to be a lot tougher. So there's pros and cons, right? There's some tougher things in a up market, but there's also a lot of some tougher things to do in a down market. It's like trade-offs, right? And if you're buying now in the market, and let's say you're buying a commercial property, the cap rate you're buying into the deal at, as you're working your numbers, just make sure you're using a higher cap rate, right? Expect a softer market when you go to sell. And the same thing applies. Let's say you're planning on doing like a longer flip on a duplex, or you're burning it out. Expect a softer market when you go to refinance it and pull your capital out. And at least that way, there's no surprises. Like the worst thing that could happen is you're right, your projections were right, and the market is softer. You've already accounted for that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the other thing is to know that when the adjustments happen, it's usually in the areas that aren't as stable.
Yeah.
They get affected the most. So I think if you're just starting out and you're looking for, a more secure deal, nothing really trumps location. I mean, it really is true in real estate. You might not get the great deal, that you get somewhere else that where we call, the outer lying areas or the fringe areas where it's questionable, right? As to how much growth you'll get if you're buying in the more stable, higher priced market. You probably won't be as affected by an adjustment. And through the years, even though prices go up and they go down and they go up and they go down, over time, they're going up, so if you can make it, and what I say by that is, you have to make some very good decisions. So if you're going for those cash flowing properties, they have to cash flow.
Yeah.
If you're buying it like Seth is saying and hoping that your upside is going to be down the road based on this happening or that happening or that happening, if it doesn't cash flow right away, it's a bad deal.
Yeah. And, just how you mentioned with location, I had a guest on my podcast, Chris Gray. He's from Australia. He has a TV show on Sky News. And he calls the properties he buys blue chip properties, like blue chip stocks. So he'll buy the beachfront property. And, there's always going to be multiple offers on these properties. But his whole thing is you can't beat the location. So, if it's a hot location today on the beach, it's going to be a hot location 10, 20, 30 years down the road. So he's okay, I guess, quote unquote, overpaying for it now to lock it up because he knows down the road there's going to be the same demand for it. So that's his whole investing strategy, just buy the best location he can. And that's how he's built his entire portfolio.
And he knows what he wants. So that's, the important thing is to know what it is that you want to start out doing. And I'm going to say something else too, that I think, and multifamily is great. I love multifamily, by the way, Seth. I have multifamily. It's great when you can have one roof and multiple doors. And, when you look at that, let's say you have a fourplex and, if you have two vacancies, you still have cash flow coming in. Mm-hmm. So you're not completely out. If you have a single family house and it's vacant, you're done. But I want to tell you that if you're getting into long-term investment, that's your strategy, and you want to get into rentals, it's really important that you know that you want to buy that property and hold it forever. Because what happens is, or at least have that mindset, because what happens is if you buy a single family house, or you have a home that you're living in and you want to buy another house, you want to upsize, and keep that. Maybe it's a townhouse. You want to get a single family house. You want to keep it. You want to rent it out. Or you just buy a single family rental to rent out. When you go to sell that property actually is more valuable empty. So what happens is, you can always sell that to somebody that wants to buy it and live in it, and they will give you profit. When you have a multifamily house or building, probably the only one that's going to want to buy it when you sell is an investor, and they're not going to want to give you a profit. And they're going to base the value of that on how much it cash flows. And where they buy it to where it cash flows, the less they buy it for, the better, happier they are. So the benefits of buying these multifamily dwellings or 2 units, 4 units, 12 units, whatever it is to get in your mind that you're going to buy these right with the intention of cash flowing, depreciating them and save some tax money and hold them forever, right? Because what a lot of people don't realize is if you start depreciating the structure over time and you sell it before it's completely depreciated, that money comes back as a tax liability. Yeah. And that's kind of like a different subject and topic altogether, but I just want you to be aware of it. So Seth, when you buy these things, you're probably at a level now where that's not necessarily the case. You don't care if you sell them because you're adding value. You're buying value add properties that you probably can profit from.
Yeah. Plus, we're doing cost segregation studies to really front load the depreciation. So it makes sense to sell in, year 5 to 7 because the tax credits run out and you're basically recycling to the next deal at that point. But you're totally bang on. The type of buyer you have is very different. going from your regular, duplex or single family home to a more commercial multifamily property. And the key with the larger multifamily is you have to leave enough meat on the bone for the next buyer. So let's say you have 50 units. You're not going to renovate all 50 units because the next buyer doesn't have any upside. So there's no incentive for them to buy the deal. So you may renovate 30 units, prove the business model, and still leave the next 20 for the next buyer. That's more of the mindset you'll have with those types of properties, because just like when you bought the property, you're looking for that value add. The next buyer is looking for that value add, unless they're doing like a 1031 and they just want to park their money and then ride it out. But if the investor's looking for that value add, you have to leave something for them. And hopefully 1031 doesn't disappear as the rumblings are saying right now in the news. So.
Yeah. Well, I can honestly say though, I've never done a 1031. I mean, it's, I don't know, for whatever reason, I guess the opportunity has never presented itself, but I think a lot of pressure comes with a 1031 too. I mean, it's, identifying the property and, a
lot of people pay a lot of money, like more money than they should, just because they, I guess one way to look at it, the tax they would have paid, but still, like I've seen it time and time again where somebody's under the gun and they have to pay much higher than the property's worth just to get that money into a deal in time.
Exactly.
Me being Canadian, I can't take advantage of the 1031 laws, but I have many friends who have done it successfully, but I've also heard some horror stories of some, at the very last minute they get the deal, and there's a whole lot of pressure.
So let's talk about something that people don't think about a lot when they're buying rental properties, is collecting the rents.
Oh yeah.
You ever have any trouble with that?
I fortunately, knock on wood, I've had some good luck by having some really solid people in my properties. Though my father had tried, he had bought a duplex with a guy he knew, and just wrong tenant in there. And I remember I was sent to go collect the rent, and the guy didn't have the money. He gave me some BS story, and then he did a midnight move a couple days later. And I had to go help my mom and dad clean out the unit. And I guess like he had his little daughter with him, but the house was in no shape to have a kid living there. And, you're finding all sorts of needles and stuff like in the floor. And it's kind of sad because, people are putting their kids in that situation, and it's not good to see. But like I said, fortunately for myself, I haven't had any big horror stories like that. There's lots of stories out there. So I think it all comes down to, having a good process for vetting tenants. You have to do your due diligence. You have to get those job letters, the credit reports. You have to follow up with the references. You have to meet them in person. For myself, I'm a big proponent of using your gut. My gut most of the time is a pretty good indicator of whether or not I get a good vibe from somebody. But whether it's yourself, whether it's your property manager doing it, you just want to have a very open conversation with whoever's doing your leasing, with who is your target tenant demographic, who's that profile you're looking for, because that's going to dictate the renovations you do in the property, how you market the property. So before you even start leasing it, before you even start renovating, you'll have to answer, okay, well, who's my ideal tenant? Are they single? What age group? What are they working? What's important to them? Is walkability important? Is parking important? Are they a millennial who wants to do yoga and have their Starbucks, or is it somebody else? Is it families? Because that's going to dictate the renovations you do, and that's going to dictate how you market the property. And then you can go from there. So I think a good piece of advice would be, if somebody's looking to acquire their first rental property or their 5th or 10th rental property, go through that exercise of developing that avatar, that tenant avatar. And that's going to help guide you along your entire business plan with that property.
Do you guys have fair housing laws and things like that in Canada? I mean, do you have?
Yeah, we have some pretty restrictive rent control in Ontario, my home province or state. The legislation is very pro-tenant, so you have to make sure you're once the tenant gets in your property here, they're in. So you have to make sure they're good, because the eviction process is not fun to go through, and it's not going to favor you as a landlord.
Yeah, I mean, we have, quite a bit of, fair housing laws, and, we have to be really careful. What I tell people is, establish, definitely get with an agent that is familiar with the laws, or an attorney, and, establish what your guidelines, and make sure that they're legal, and then, make them set, just like you said, have a set of guidelines, because what you don't want to do is, kind of get off of that. If you have a credit score limit you're requiring, or whatever, it is length on the job, amount of money that, they must make to pay the rent. But I always say, screen well, because that really determines whether you hate your life as a landlord or whether you can be successful at it. And believe me, bad tenants can make you really wish you weren't in the business. And just from a cost standpoint, I mean, the damage, I've had some pretty, awful stories. And every time I think back on, an awful story, it was always because I didn't stay true to, my guidelines, what it was that I required from a tenant. And so you have to be careful. And sometimes, just renting to your friends can be the worst thing in the world too. You have to treat your friends, in my opinion, like anyone else. They have to qualify. But, if done right, I mean, it's a great thing. I mean, some people make great tenants. They stay there for long periods of time, and, they buy down your debt, and you make money along the way. And then one day your properties are paid off, and then they're purely cash flowing. So how do you finance your deals?
Yeah. So, on the residential side, when I was growing the portfolio, it was like your typical residential debt. Here in Canada, we don't have, we've got, we deal more in like 5-year terms. So it's like a balloon every 5 years. So, that was the challenge I had growing the single family portfolio. Because, all the properties were in my name, and to the bank, I didn't really fit inside their box anymore. On the multifamily side, Fannie, Freddie, we're looking for, your typical, your conventional debt. Right now, we're trying to stay away from having a bridge type of loan situation. So we're looking for that deal where we can go in conventional. Like the lending interest rates right now are dirt cheap. I know, the past.
No pun intended.
No, exactly. Like the past 5 years have been absolutely ridiculous for interest rates. So, if you can lock in now, especially in the United States, where you guys can enjoy that rate over the entire term of the mortgage, that's a great situation.
It's different though on a commercial side.
Oh,
so,
yes.
I mean, we're dealing with if you're, and even though it's residential, guys, I mean, when you think about residential, they're really the mortgages are really for you to live in the house. So when you start getting into establishing rental portfolios and things like that, a lot of banks don't really consider you a residential lender. They consider you a commercial lender. And what Seth is talking about with a 5-year balloon, that means that they'll lock your rate in for 5 years. And then what happens is, if the rates go up, your refi in 5 years is going to be a higher payment. So, there's, really is a lot to think about. So we do have that. So guys, I want to talk about, as we wrap up here tonight, I want to kind of go over some goals and for you guys as potential investors. And we're going to publish all of Seth's information in the show notes. And guys, reach out to him, follow him on his YouTube channel. He's got a great podcast as well. And, I believe, guys, with the resources that you have nowadays, it's a lot different than when I started out. when the internet wasn't around. So, I think if you want to start investing in real estate, there's some things that you should do. So I want to kind of go over 10 goals that I've kind of outlined for you to get yourself going. One is I want you to pick a date by when you're going to make your purchase. Pick a date, write it down. And I want you to decide and do research to determine whether that purchase is going to be a flip or a hold. And then I want you to determine what you're going to buy. For you, that may be your single family home for you to live in, or it may be a duplex, maybe a 4-unit, maybe a little commercial piece, but I want you to decide what it is that you want to buy. And then I want you to determine the area. I want you to do your research. And I want you to pick the spot. Now, what part of the town is it going to be in? And then I want you to start an automated search, whether you're using Zillow or Truly or Realtor.com. But I want you to get something automated going. And then I want you to have a heart-to-heart with yourself and determine whether you want to buy something turnkey or whether you think you have the skills or the knowledge to do a little renovation and repair. And then I want you to find a mentor, right? Somebody like the neighborhood contractor or a buddy of yours that has done this before. I want you to find a real estate agent, somebody who's a pro in helping somebody like you. Then I want you to start assembling your trade. Start thinking about, who's going to install carpet for you, who's going to paint, who's going to do things, landscaping, who's going to cut the grass. Start getting the trade, start establishing, and talking to people and find out who's doing work in the area that you want to be in. Then I want you to line up some financing. Determine where you're going to get your money from, how much money you need to borrow versus what you have. And then I want you to do it. And guys, I want you to report back to us. I want you to get yourself going and buy your first investment property if it's something that you so desire to do. And stay in touch with us. Watch our shows. Reach out, comment, ask questions. Seth, thank you so much for being on our show tonight. You've been great.
Yeah, those were some solid tips. I like that. Thanks so much. We had a blast. And, you do a great job with your show.
Well, thank you so much for that. And as somebody who's very successful in their show, I'll take that as a compliment. Guys, until next time, please don't forget to like, subscribe, or follow on whatever video or audio platform you're absorbing this content on. And until next week, see you then.